Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode we still have a bunch of bodywork to finish up on the Alfarrari. Alright, well thank you very much to those of you who have already subscribed and got us over that 100,000 subscriber mark. We're very grateful, and if you haven't, please think about subscribing. It does help the channel out moving forward. Today, what we're going to get back onto is there's still a bunch of bodywork on this car that is not finished yet. As you can see here, behind my dry sump oil tank, there is actually supposed to be a panel here that isn't there. But before we actually get to putting that panel on, there's a couple more little bits and pieces that I want to finish up on this dry sump oil tank. So I've had microphone issues, but basically, I have not been happy with the mount for this dry sump tank for the entire time I've done it. This is the third time I'm redoing it, but this time I'm going to use a radiator mount. So I decided that this radiator mount bushing was the best way to go. I'm much happier with this than the other versions. So what I've gone through and done is I made up a little cardboard template for the mount that I want to get it to sit just at the right height and all the rest of it. And then I went through and made up my a little steel one, as you can see, and realised, but to actually fit the dimple die into it, I realised it wouldn't fit. So take two, here I am. So I've explained this all earlier, but I had realised I had microphone issues and I've had to change it and redo it. So, but now we have now I have my finished mounts all folded up, ready to go. So now it's time to get it over to the car and just make sure it's all going to sit and fit exactly the way I want it to. Okay, so I have my mount in now. This time I left it with plenty of space for any water to get out of the corners. My rubber bushing will fit in like so. Then the spike on the bottom of this tank goes into that. So I've been playing with this tank for a while and I sort of put it off before, but now that I'm actually going to close this all in, the issue I have is that this is still, it's a little bit too tight. I built it too close a tolerance to fit into this spot. And this rib on the through here, actually this part sort of touches the car, but so does this strip at the top. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually sort of have a further look at this tank and see if I can make it a little bit fit a little bit better than it currently does, because it's not quite up to what I want. All right, so I took a sliver out and sort of bent it down, and I've trial fit it in the car. That fits so much nicer. There's a nice sort of 5mm gap at least all the way around the the closest parts of this to the guard. Gives me plenty of place to put some sound deadening at a later stage when I actually finally install after I paint it and everything, so that there's no way there's going to heat's going to transfer to the outside of the guard or any of that. So now I need to thoroughly clean this up because I've just sort of mangled it all up with a grinder. Thoroughly clean it, and then hopefully I can get some nice neat welds on this. So let's start the cleaning. Okay, so I've finally got this welded up. I've re-test fitted it and it clears much better than it did before. I am much happier with the fit. It was something that's been bothering me for quite some time, and I just put it off because I didn't want to touch this thing anymore. It took me so long to make it, and yeah, so now I'm glad that it's done, it's sorted, and this should do the job nicely. And while I'm working on this, there's one last thing that I wanted to tackle on this dry sump tank that I hadn't done up to now. I have already set this up as so basically to test the oil level in this. I've set up a dipstick that'll go through the filler neck. Many of you might have seen that I welded this tube on the inside that goes through, so I can sort of put a dipstick down inside here, which I will keep, and I'll still have the dipstick as a level system. But what I've also gone and got myself is I got myself one of these. So this is a fuel level sensor, which will also work for the oil level. It will handle the oil. And this is going to go in to the outside, so outside of the centrifuge. And what I'm thinking is I want this as sort of a fail-safe. I did look at some of the sender units, similar to what they use on the 911, on my 996, that when you turn the car on, it's an electric sensor that sits in the bottom of the tank, and it'll tell you what the oil level is. But I'm not sure how they entirely work, but I know on my 911 you have to wait 5 seconds for it to actually come up with the signal, whereas I want something that will tell me on the fly if I'm flooring the accelerator and this gets sucked dry of oil. I want this to be able to drop down, and as soon as it hits a predetermined amount and through the ECU, I want it to cut the fun, because I don't want to run dry of oil and this goes down low enough in the tank that, yeah, I'll set it up so that if it does bottom out, we know, okay, let's back it off, even if it just cuts it for a second, just so that it can actually save the engine from running dry. So I'm going to fit this now. It's going to fit in like so into the tank, and yeah, and then we'll be able to finally fit this up for good, I think. Okay, so after another epic amount of messing around with that dry sump oil tank, I can finally get on to what I was planning on doing this episode, and fitting up these lower front guard extensions onto the car. So I sort of previously got it close before. Basically the way they come as a reproduction panel is it's got a 90-degree edge along this edge along here. So what I need to do is need to go around and sort of tap it over, get it just right, exactly the way I want it, and then I need to start sort of cutting and fitting it to get it perfect for where it needs to go. So I've been spending a lot of time now just going backwards and forwards and getting this panel gap just right. It's a matter of just sort of tweaking the fold on this panel here. As you can see, it's just sitting there. I had to actually sort of put a little notch in it just up here so that basically the way that I managed to get it to fit up and overlap, because this is currently overlapping by about 1 centimetre, about 10 mil here. So if I pull that off, as you can see, this is folded over on the edge. So what I've done is I've folded it over reasonably tightly here. I've folded it over sharply at the bottom so that, because this bit is actually tucks against the lower part of the sill panel here, whereas this piece actually grips over the top of this panel, which I repaired before. Now, because I can't easily get in behind and sort of wrap it around, what I managed to do is I notched out this top section here. I've cut a notch out of that so that when I weld it together, I'll weld it all together and I'll be able to get in behind, take the door off and just get in and do this last little bit. But it gets me a nice overlap where I can go through and trim and cut and mount these together on the car when I get to it. But for the time being, it's just a matter of getting that overlap and everything sitting exactly where I want it. If I can just put this back on properly. So as you can see, it's quite a tight fit and it sits in there quite nicely. So it's a matter of getting the panel curve right, the level right, and the gap right. And it's quite a bit of going backwards and forwards and just tweaking it until you get it right, because it's much easier to do it now than it is when I've actually welded it all together. All right, that was a whole lot of work trying to get this all flat and smooth again the way I wanted it. It just always seems to buckle and bend a lot more than I would like, no matter how much care I take when I'm actually welding this together. By the time I've welded it and ground it all back and everything, getting it nice and perfectly flat and smooth takes a lot of work, and that's why I went backwards and forwards. Heat shrinking, I was using the slapper file that I really like, that basically is just an old file that I've bent just so I've got a bit of a handle on it. And this helps to sort of, it grabs and pulls the metal, particularly when I'm shrinking. It helps pull the metal around to sort of get it to sit nice and flat. And yeah, a bit of persuasion, and it's looking really good now. So, and that still sits in there beautifully. So it goes in and out, and there's plenty of clearance now. I was really concerned before. Now it's not touching all the way down, 5 mil gap at least over the whole thing. So plenty of room to put some heat shielding and stuff. All right, well, the right-hand side of the car's done. So now I'm moving over to the left, and obviously I've got to patch in the bottom of this front guard as well. But before I touch the front guard, I want to take you over this door. Now, I looked at this door, and originally I was going to keep it. It was in much better condition than the driver's door, but there's a few rust holes in here, just here. There's a dent up here, and a few more rust holes back over at the door handle. There's little bits of damage around, and there's a few rust holes in the back, just small areas. And I sort of thought, yeah, look, I can patch up this door, and I can, but the more I do this, the more I'm realizing that it's a false economy. Trying to repair something like this, by the time I actually repair these, there's also a crease line across here. Welding these up is going to distort the metal in some way, and it's quite difficult to get to all of the parts inside the door. So trying to get the door flat again, it's never going to be perfect. It's not that expensive to just get. I just went to Classic Alfa and ordered a replacement door skin. It doesn't make sense to repair this door, even though I was originally going to. So this was not part of my original order, but I'm ordering it now. So let's cut off the old door skin and put on a nice, fresh, straight, clean new one. So removing a door skin is actually a lot easier than you would think. Generally the way they are fitted is they are a panel that clips over, and then the edges are all folded in all the way around the outside of the inner skin and just held on. And the easiest way to get them off is to get a grinder and grind off around the edge, all the way around the edge of the door. Grind it in until you've ground away the edge of the U-shape. Basically, there's nothing else holding the outside on. Makes it very easy to get a door skin off. The top, you do have to have spot welds. So along the top is generally going to be some spot welds. There are some spot welds on the side sometimes, but generally, yeah, just run the grinder around. It's pretty quick and easy. So let's do that and get this door skin off. All right, so I just went around then, as you saw, just slowly working my way along, all the way around, just bending over this slip all the way on the door. So now it's time to refit it to the car and make sure that everything lines up nicely before I go through and spot weld the top edge back together. All right, so I have the door on and the line is actually quite good now. The panel gaps are looking quite decent. There's a little bit of tweaking that's needed, but that's pretty simple. You know, that's a little bit tight through here, and over this side, I've been sort of tweaking it. Got the gap is a bit wide in the middle here, and but along the bottom, it's looking quite good. So that's easy enough to tweak later, but I'm pretty happy with the fit now. I had to actually make myself another shim that sits behind the top of the door here to get the door, tilt the whole door down a little bit. But now we've got that on, it's time to start looking at what we're going to do down the bottom here and see if we can attach on the lower panel of the front guard. So as with the other side, this panel comes with this sort of 90-degree lip all the way down the side. So what I need to do now is try and bend over some of it and sort of get it to line up where I want it so that I can get the perfect fitment the whole way over. All right, so that is looking nice and level and even at the moment. So I'm going to go through with the TIG now and see if I can just touch it in without warping it too much. We'll just see how it goes. All right, so I really took my time on this one, really slowing down, cooling it in between little tiny strips of weld and hammering it, and it's still nice and flat actually. It's coming out much better than the other side. So I've got a nice new flat disc on here, so I'm going to go through now and just try and do this in sections as well and keep it cool, because I find often this will cause more heat distortion than the welding itself. I've had lots of suggestions over the years of different methods to grind down welds. I find this as the best method that puts the least amount of heat in it over anything else I've seen. So let's grind this back and see if we can keep the distortion to a minimum. Well, that is definitely the way to do it. That is much better than what I did on the other side. The other side I went too quickly. This I went very slowly and sort of took my time, just doing tiny bits at a time, and it worked really well. So that is looking great. It's nice and flat and smooth. This is nice and level. So I think the next thing to do is I need to now spot weld on the top edges of the doors on both sides, so we can seal it in and call it good. This old spot welder is great. I had to mess around a bit to get fittings for the end that actually fit, but once I've actually got it together, it just makes it so neat and simple to do to join these panels together like they were at the factory. This side is now done, which brings me over to this side. Now I prepared the whole top edge of the door, and then I went around to the inside and realised in my haste to put the door skin on, I never actually repaired the internal part of this door. There is quite a bit along this top edge, as you can see, that's all rusted out on the inner skin, and there's also rust on the inner skin down the bottom. So that is, I think, a job for another day. The inner skin on this other door is quite good. There's a couple of tiny little spots that need to be touched up, but it's basically quite a good door. So I think this, at another time, needs the door skin pulled off, and this door needs to be repaired. Okay, well, the car finally has all of its external steel panels on. It's been a long time coming, and there are still tweaks to do. Obviously, now I need to go back and fix this driver's door internally. That's something that I should have tackled at the time, but I was in such a hurry to try and get the rear end of the car on that I didn't get onto it at the time, and left it for now. So that shouldn't be a huge issue. I do have to take the door skin off, but it's only tapped over. I can take it off on one side and do that. So you may have noticed that I didn't release a video on the Alfarrari last week, and that's not due to a lack of work on the car. I am actually doing just as much work as before on the car, but I've decided that instead of just getting videos out with very little content, I might hold off some weeks and only do a fortnightly video on the Alfarrari if there's not enough good content to keep it interesting. And in this case, we're doing the same thing on both sides. There was a bit of work on that dry sump tank, which I'm quite happy about. Now it fits very well and fits nicely, and I am happy with how the panels are all on the car. But that is it for this week, so I think it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Last week marked the end of Alfa Romeo's history, at least for now, but have no fear, we have plenty more to cover on the other side of this build with Ferrari. Enzo Anselmo Giuseppe Maria Ferrari was born on the 18th of February in 1898 in Modena in northern Italy. His father, Alfredo, ran a local blacksmith which forged axles for the railways. When he was 10 years old in 1908, his father took him and Alfredo Jr., his older brother, to the Circuit de Bologna, where they watched Felice Nazzaro and Vincenzo Lancia battle it out on the track. And it was this that made Enzo want to become a racing driver.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, this is not necessarily going to be a weekly video on this car moving forward. I think I just want to put videos out that have got more content in them, and I get more stuff done. And if I don't get enough stuff done in a week, then I might hold it over for a week. I'm still going to do videos at least once a week on something, so there will be 9/11 videos, but I might not necessarily do 2 videos every week because
you said you wanted to make sure it was quality over quantity.
Exactly. So hopefully you guys get on board with that.
There you go.
And yeah, we'll just see how it pans out. But I'm pretty happy with the progress in this one. This bodywork stuff is very slow getting everything right, but I'm really happy with the fitment of that dry sump oil tank now. It fits beautifully, and the guard and the alignment of the doors and all that sort of stuff is great, even though I do need to disassemble this door again, but that will be for a later date.
Yes, indeed it will be. So well done on getting this done so far. Please like and subscribe if you haven't, and thank you very much to our patrons who
Really help us out.
Really help out. And
And the patrons help out. And if you want to be one of those patrons, you can also help out and get to watch the videos ad-free a day before everyone else.
Yeah.
All right, guys. See you in the next one.
That was a bit weird. Cover on this build with Ferrari.
On the other side.
Enzo Anselmo Giuseppe Murillo. His father, Alfredo. His father, Alfredo, ran a local